Well, hello there. It's been a minute since I filmed anything. We've had some home projects, we've had some things at church, we hosted Passover, and then last weekend we did a free sale with our community center. So there's been a lot happening around here, so I haven't really had an opportunity to film. But today I have a special treat on this Mother's Day weekend. A very dear friend of mine is stopping by, and we are going to chat about homeschooling. So I hope that you stick around, whether you are interested in homeschooling or not, or you are a homeschool mom and you're just looking for some encouragement. I just pray that this blesses you and encourages you. Well, welcome back. Thanks for being with me today. Me and Mishka and Autumn. Kazi's over there in the corner. Hi. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk homeschooling today. We're going to get a little introduction from Autumn first, who she is, how many kids she has, all of that sort of thing. And then we're going to talk through the things that we enjoyed, the things that we would probably not have done, some interesting things that we did to make it through the school year, and just kind of what we learned as moms and as women from homeschooling our kids. I want to start by just saying, even if you have never considered homeschooling, please watch this video, because I can tell you from personal experience, I didn't set out to homeschool. But I did end up homeschooling, and I'll tell a little bit of my story in a minute too. But you never know where the Lord is going to lead you, and you need to keep an open mind to that and allow Him to show you what He has for you and for your family, for your children. So please keep an open mind. And then if you're a homeschooling mom, or if you're getting ready to start, I pray that this encourages you, that you get some ideas from us. And if I can be a resource, if I can help in any way, please reach out in the comments or send me a message, because it can be discouraging. It can be difficult, and sometimes you just need someone to cheer you on a little bit and to give you some encouragement, and maybe to help you see things from a different perspective. So with that, this is my dear friend Autumn, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself a little bit and just tell about you and your kids and how many you have, when you started homeschooling, how many years you homeschooled.
Well, I have 6 children. They're all grown and married now. Um, they we started homeschooling in 1993. So homeschooled for 23 years to get all of them through. Um, Lots of
That's
fun,
a long
lots of
time.
things. It is. It is a long time, but it was great. Just seems like so short now, but I have 15 grandkids, so we have lots of kids for the next generation of homeschooling.
Yes.
And right now, I do research at Children's Hospital. So
And you did that prior
yes,
to.
I did research at Children's Hospital before I had kids, and then when I had the first two when they were little, and then stayed home, did homeschooling. Actually, did it. I was a real estate agent, so
Oh,
did
okay.
different some stuff while I was homeschooling, but mostly stayed home because it's a big job.
It is a big job, especially with 6 kids. It's a big
Yes.
job with 2 kids. So a little bit different stories here too, in that you have a college degree. You had a professional job when you had kids and started homeschooling. I do not have a college degree. I feel like the education that I received in high school, in Catholic school, was a very good education. But I was not able to finish college, so I don't have a degree. I was working a professional job when I had kids. I was an administrative assistant in a litigation office for an insurance company. Um, But then once I had Taylor, I started doing, little jobs like
Mhm.
makeup counter at
Yeah.
Lazarus and things
Yeah.
like that. Um, so you started homeschooling in 93. I started in 2001. So in 93, I know that in 2001, when I started, there were not a lot of
No.
homeschoolers, and it was not exactly a welcome decision when we made it.
Mhm.
So tell me a little bit about what was going on in 93
Oh,
and
homeschooling.
how people responded to you when you decided to homeschool.
Yeah, I didn't know any homeschoolers actually
Yeah.
at all. So, but this one family came to our church, the Maxwells.
Yes.
So, they moved to the area for a job, and they started coming to our church, and they homeschooled. So that was my first introduction to homeschooling, and their kids were really sweet and great, and they were really sweet and great. And we went to their Bible study at their house, like a
Mm-hmm.
small group, and just learned more about it. I really hadn't thought about it at all,
Yeah.
basically. And then when Mackenzie is my first, she was 3. We started, I started doing preschool stuff with
Yeah.
her. And so from then on, I homeschooled till they were all out.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my introduction to it. And I didn't really know anybody else doing it except for I kind of recruited some people
Yeah.
to start doing it too. So that was get some friends on
Yeah.
board
Well, you need
and
it.
get a group. So few of us started. They started a little bit after I did, but we did stuff together ever since we started.
Yeah.
Like so some co-ops and some trips and stuff. So that was a good support
So your
because
kids
not many
never
people
went
were
to
doing.
school.
My kids, no, never
Okay.
went to school.
So for us, Taylor actually went to preschool. He went to
Mm-hmm.
a mommy's day out. And he started reading at like 4. He has a photographic memory. So I could show him a word one time and he would remember it. So I didn't ever have to really teach him to read. Um, so when he was getting ready to go into kindergarten, I kept him home just because I thought, well, I'm not ready for him to go be with
Mm-hmm.
those kids yet. And he's already reading. So let's just work with that a little bit. So we kind of worked through some things in kindergarten. And then in first grade, we actually put him in public school. We were living in Ellesmere. And so we put him in the public school there. And after the first 6 weeks, the principal called us and said, he's advanced.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd like to put him in second grade. And then for math and reading, we'd like to put him in third grade. To my thought was, he's 6,
Yeah.
he's going to be
So
in,
little.
he's been in school for 6 weeks. And to put him in with third graders, holy moly,
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't think we're going to do that. And then he said, or you can leave him where he is and he'll just level out and be with the other kids at some point. And that wasn't really an option either. Like
Yeah.
you were going to discourage our kid
Right.
from advancing and learning. And
Yeah.
so we brought him home and homeschooled first grade. So then we thought, okay, second grade, we're going to try private school and see. And so Maddie was in kindergarten, Taylor was in second grade at this point, and so we put him in. I taught, it was a Becca, and we had already, started with a Becca at home. So I was like, I can teach, and my kids can be in school because you're supposed to be in school,
Yeah.
right? And so turns out second grade, same thing. We really need to bump him up. And we tried it. We bumped him up to
Mm-hmm.
third grade, and it was a disaster. It was a disaster. The teacher was trying to make an example of him. And like the very first day, put him up at the board, trying to get him to do things he hadn't even learned yet. And so halfway through, we decided this isn't working either. We're going to homeschool again. And that was the year that we went to Ecuador on our trip and we were invited. And so then in kindergarten, when Taylor was in kindergarten, I kind of felt like I really enjoy this. But again, kids are supposed to be in school. And I didn't know anybody that was homeschooling. So I can't be the one, right? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a teacher. And you tell yourself all of these things. Um, but then, the Lord really didn't make an option. It was kind of like, here, you're
Right.
homeschooling. But then when we went on the mission field, if we hadn't already had that foundation,
Yeah.
which I think he was trying to tell us the whole time,
Right.
then it would have been very difficult. But so we didn't really set out because I didn't know anybody. Um, and then when we decided to, I had family members that didn't speak to me for years because they felt like we were doing such a disservice to our children.
Yeah.
That and they need to be in school and they need to be around kids their own age, and they go through the whole list of all the things that kids need.
Right.
And it's very discouraging.
Yeah.
But then when this is what you're supposed to do,
Right. I didn't really have anybody who was discouraging.
that's good.
Like, people would ask some questions, and people still ask me questions if
Yeah.
they find out that I homeschooled, but I think it's more accepted
Yes, much
in
more.
general. Like, then it was more new and it was legal, but
Yeah. Well, and in 2001, it was legal.
Right.
You had to go to the school board and let them know that you were, doing all this stuff. But when we started doing it, it was like, why?
Yeah.
You can go to school, you can take them to school, you've got your day free. Why in the world would
Yeah.
you do this?
Yeah.
And
a few people like that, but people more were just like, whatever, you do, you do your thing, but they weren't discouraging, really.
Yeah.
But,
well, that's good.
yeah.
And I feel like after a couple of years, I started running into people, or God maybe brought people to our church that homeschooled. And so I ended up with some friends that were doing it. But the first couple of years, I didn't know anybody that was doing it. And that's okay. It's okay to be the renegade.
It is. It is.
And I feel like when you do step out like that, often then God does bring people around you. You might have to recruit a little too.
Right.
But he allows community to be built around something new, something that he's prompting you to do. Right. And I really feel like he did that for me. And when they're little, and you're only spending half an hour or an hour a day schooling, it's also a little bit different. Now,
you just build a little at a time.
Did you know that when you started homeschooling? How was your first little bit of homeschooling?
Cindy Maxwell, the lady that had homeschooled, she was really good at encouraging and letting you know, like, you don't have to spend all day at school. In my mind, at first, I was like, oh, it's like when I played teacher when I was little.
Exactly.
We'd make all the papers and put the stickers on them and stuff.
Yes.
But it really, when they first started, it was less than an hour a day. And then that gives them time to be kids, too. They don't have to be in the classroom following everybody else and just sitting there waiting sometimes for everybody else to catch up or get in line or whatever. So you give them a lot of time to play outside and be kids. And
adventurous.
Yes.
Build things and do things that, they enjoyed doing. Right. I was very much like, okay, if kindergarten is half day, then I need to spend half a day doing this. And what in the world am I going to do with you for half a day? But I got a chalkboard and I had a little desk for them. And, I was trying to create the atmosphere of a classroom instead of allowing it to be more organic. And again, I didn't really know that it didn't have to be that way. And
Kenzie and Jenny they like to do school.
Yeah.
So they did like the chalkboard or the whiteboard, and after we were finished, they just kept doing school.
That's how Taylor was.
Yeah.
He wanted workbooks.
Yeah.
He liked workbooks.
Yeah.
And he enjoyed that. Maddie is much more my expressive. She would sit down and do them, and she liked to play school, but she really wanted to just do her own thing for the most part early on.
And when the boys came along, they were like, let's do as little school as we can. When they were small, like, get it done, get outside.
Yeah. Um, okay, so you're doing it. You've got multiple kids coming along. How did you manage? Because by the time Elena came along, Kinsey would have been pretty far into school.
Yeah, yeah, she was. She was. They're 9 years apart.
Yeah.
So, but Kenzie and Jenny, the oldest ones, were always very independent with their schoolwork. So I had the, that was good for me because they would, I could get them going and they would do their stuff, and then I could do the, little bit with the little guys that I needed to do.
Yeah. So with Elena,
Uh-huh.
so you have an infant, you're schooling at least 3
Mhm.
at this point.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about adding in as you're dealing with a baby and
Yeah.
all
I
those
think
kids.
I would always start with the older ones first and get them going. There's some things that I had to do with them one-on-one kind of thing.
Okay. So you were saying that you would get the older kids started first.
Yeah. Get the older kids started first and then let them do a little bit on their own and even take a break sometimes. Like they could go play outside for 20 minutes or something while I got the other ones going. So it's kind of, my older kids like to read a lot too, so they would read on their own if there was a break, where I couldn't work with them, all at the same time. But it was, and the little guys, we when I had all 6 of them, and the younger ones were small. We had a basement that I set up. I had like a playroom, and then some tables for school stuff, so I could leave the little guys in the playroom with the gate, and they still were right there.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny because we had used to be a cistern in the house, and they made it into a closet. And Elena thought that was her room. So her Barbies were in there. So she would always just go in there and sit. We had a little carpet in there, and she would sit and play with the Barbies. So there's always, they would just play if I wasn't working with them if I weren't working.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? It's okay for there to be downtime.
Right.
It's okay for them to have to figure out how to fill some time. Especially, I feel like in this generation where every moment is consumed.
Yes.
Kids are in school all day.
Right.
They come home and they're either watching something on the TV in the car on the way to wherever they're going, or they've got a device.
Yeah.
Or then they're at practice for something. So every minute is full.
Yeah, structured.
Yes. And so they don't know, they never have to figure out how to entertain themselves and how to just be quiet, to be still. And I think that even as adults, I struggle with that now because there's so much going all the time, and our culture is so driven to have every minute filled.
Yeah.
That when we do have time, it's like, okay, I'm not being productive. Something's wrong.
Yes.
and I think that we've really done ourselves and our kids a disservice by filling every minute like that.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm sure that with 6 kids, I don't know how you went to the doctor. I know I went when I went, my kids were with me.
Yes.
And, going to the OBGYN, my kids are sitting back here and, because I didn't have anybody to watch them. Yeah. They went to the grocery store. They had to learn how to behave in different situations. Because they had to go everywhere with me. And
learn good social skills.
Yes.
By just going to a doctor's appointment.
Exactly.
And learning in everyday life.
Talking to adults.
Yeah.
And, different aged people and how to communicate with them. And I wasn't one that really made my kids talk to strangers. But at the same time, I did kind of encourage it because there was a lot of times that people would say, "Why aren't you in school?"
Right.
And then,
we don't go to school.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. But yeah, my kids would answer that often, and people's eyes would be this big. What do you mean? We homeschool. Well, in their minds, it's the same thing, right? You're not in school, so you must just be free for all. Like
someone try. Why aren't you at home doing your stuff? Or
But even trips to the grocery store. I mean, we tried to incorporate some kind of learning as the kids got a little bit older, I would give them money and they would have to figure out what
Yeah.
kinds of things at the grocery store they could get with that money. And I think everything can be a learning experience.
It still is.
It absolutely it
Everything
is.
I do, I'm learning new things.
But I think that if our mindset is we're going to pull learning into even trips to the grocery store, or you do have to go to the doctor,
Right.
and so okay, let's talk about, not necessarily let's talk about where babies come
Right.
from, but let's talk about some things here in the doctor's office.
Right.
Here's some pictures. Here's and let's, if it's age appropriate,
Right.
obviously. But you can, if you're thinking about it, you can make every moment
Right.
a learning experience, which then often kids that attend school miss out on some of those opportunities.
Right.
And intentional parenting is important whether your kids are going to school or
Right.
not.
Right.
If they're going to school, I feel like you just have less time in the afternoon and evening to incorporate some of those things. You still can.
Right.
But when you have all day, like, I don't know if they even still do things like this anymore, but at like the Y, they had a homeschool class for swimming.
They do. They do.
They still do that.
Yeah.
So we found those kinds of things too. And that's another good way to connect with other homeschool families. And for the kids to interact. They don't have to be, I mean, at this point in your life, are you at the same age of people in everything that you do?
No, I'm
rarely, right?
Almost always the oldest.
Me too. But I understand the concept of having kids learning in a room full of kids their same age, but even then kids don't learn at the same pace,
Right.
even if they're the same age.
Right.
And so I think that it's so fun to watch your kids get excited about learning, and giving them the opportunity to really expand in areas that they're interested in.
Yes, I think that's what they miss out on sometimes.
Yeah.
School.
With my kids, for when we started book reports, I let them pick books based on things that they were interested in. And we still followed the structure for writing a report, but for quite a while I let them, if we needed to do a bibliography, or bibliography, is that what I'm trying to say? Biography. Bibliography is not the word. Homeschool mom.
You need one of those too, though, if you write a paper.
Right. But if they were doing a biography, then I would give them multiple people to choose from, somebody that they were interested in, or different things like that. We
had that same kind of thing. We almost always did co-op with a group of people, whether I made the co-op or we did it with some others. But we did a lot of unit learning, or like history stuff where we're in a time period and they can choose the project for the end kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's good for them to be able to choose and look something they're interested in.
Yeah.
It was good. And then I have musical kids, so a lot of especially the boys, would do musical things for their project. And I think that was good for them to be able to do that.
Yeah. And then as they got older, I limited, because you have to do, sometimes you just have to do things, right?
Yeah, in college you have to do certain things.
Right.
So sometimes you do have to have a limit.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And it's like as they get older, it's good to have that.
But instilling that excitement and interest and a desire to learn and to know more.
Right.
So tell me a couple of things, or one thing that you would say you guys did as a homeschool family for learning that maybe other families didn't do. Something that you pulled in, and because I've been thinking about this, I'll tell you one thing that we did. So every month, we would pick a country, and we would go to Jungle Gyms in Cincinnati, and we would find food from that country. And then the kids we would read, we'd go to the library, we'd find videos, VHS tapes at the time,
Yeah.
videos and books on that country. And as one of their like class times, the kids, we would read about it, we would do things, and then we would make food based on that country. And if it was, they sat on the floor to eat or whatever kind of cultural things they did, we would do those things and try to get the kids to try new food, to learn about other cultures. At the time, we were really feeling a pull to missions, and we didn't know where God was leading us. So we were kind of like, hey, let's
Study the world.
pull it all in, and then wherever God takes us, maybe they'll know. Of course, we didn't study Ecuador before we went there, but we did study like some South American stuff. And
Yeah.
so, but that was one thing that we did that I know a lot of families didn't do. And not everybody has a jungle gyms with all the ethnic food and all of that kind of stuff. But I think that you can take those kind of moments, and it's learning and it's pulling in, making your kids see things differently, different perspective, not every, and when we did like the Middle East, okay, well, you only eat with your right hand.
Yes,
Because
right.
you're, and talking through some of those kind of cultural things. And now, my kids didn't always want to try everything, but now they eat all kinds of stuff. They're not afraid to try other things.
Right.
Actually, they would prefer, to try as ethnic as
Something,
possible
right.
versus just, like American food, because we peaked that in them when they were little.
Yeah.
So
that's a good thing. My kids would be mad if I didn't mention our mapping the world by heart adventures.
Yeah.
We had all of my kids learned how to draw the whole world.
Wow.
By hand, like by memory, with all the capitals of everything.
That's awesome.
So they were really good at geography,
I guess.
But it was good for me too. I love geography. I love history and geography, even though I'm a science person.
Yeah.
I love all of it. But with co-op, I think we had a lot of good experiences that people wouldn't normally have in school. I think we had a couple of Seder meals.
Yeah.
To and to talk about Jewish customs and stuff that were important biblically, which I think is good. I did, especially with the younger kids. Kinsey and Jenny didn't go through this program as much, but it was called Tapestry of Grace, and it was walking through history from creation until current times, and it was a 4 years to go through all of that, but you went through it 3 times. So in your schooling, you went through it at 3 different levels. And I think that was a really cool thing to do with studying. And it incorporated biblical stuff, all the biblical history. So I think that was a really good thing for my kids to do.
I've never heard of that.
It's great. It's a really good program and uses real literature, like not textbooks, but books, real books. So I really like that. We did a lot of cool projects with that in co-ops and at home and stuff. So I think that was, I like the projects.
Yeah.
We had a really fun when we were studying, when we were at Esther time. I had high schoolers and I assigned them a person or groups in the whole Esther story and had them come to co-op dressed up. And we just acted out the whole story.
Oh,
and it was
cool.
one of the best things that we ever did. It was really funny too. But I think they will remember that story really well and how all history was happening around that. And I think the projects were really fun to do.
We did, we had a season pass to Kings Island. We were pastoring and our day off was Thursday. So we got season passes. Well, they would have a homeschool day.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they did with homeschool day was you could build your own roller coaster and present it, and then they judged and everything. And so we did that with the kids one year. But I love that there are so many places. Again, now homeschooling is so much more prevalent than
Yeah.
it was when my kids were little.
Mhm.
By this time, it was, in the 2010s. So Kings Island
Yeah.
and the aquarium, and there's
Yes.
lots of
Right.
places that would have homeschool days where, and
Yeah.
they give you um, almost a curriculum
Yeah.
for the kids
Right.
to walk through
Right.
and to
Lots of
answer
sciencey
questions.
things too
Yeah.
with this stuff.
So there are so many resources now.
Yeah.
The more it's accepted, the more
Yes.
places jump on board.
Yeah. I think one thing that we did that was really fun was go to Perfect North on Thursdays in
Yeah.
the morning and ski, like during ski season.
Yeah.
And we just took crock-pot lunch and spent the whole day there. I thought that was really fun to do. And we
Yes.
went to the zoo. I have been to the zoo. I don't even know, hundreds of times. I
Yes.
still go. I go down there and walk
Yeah.
from work. So the zoo was so amazing. All my
Yes.
kids are animal
Yeah,
lovers.
we love
so,
the zoo too.
Yeah. So that was really fun.
Yeah.
Now all my grandkids are little animal lovers too.
That's good. Yeah. Your grandkids just picking up worms
Yes.
and yeah.
Turtles, whatever.
So something that maybe you didn't consider was not a great idea. That at the time it didn't really occur to you that it might not be a great idea. Something that we did that didn't even occur to me might be a problem was that when we were headed to the mission field, Maddie was learning to read. And we also were teaching the kids Spanish. So she really got her Spanish rules and her English rules confused, and she struggled with reading for a long time.
Mhm.
And I felt like, oh my gosh, I have ruined my child. Like she would get so
She'll never
frustrated
Yeah,
reading.
right.
And we read Redfish Bluefish for like a year. Every day for like a year. Because she struggled.
Mhm.
And but when it clicked, she became an avid reader.
Uh-huh.
And also, moving to Ecuador, she had some Spanish in her, and she used every bit of Spanish that she knew when she was there. She was 7 when we moved to Ecuador. So she now is a great reader. She loves to read. She loves to learn. She can speak Spanish fluently. So at the time, I really felt like, and it probably wasn't a great idea, but it didn't occur to me that the two might get confused in her brain. But just like kids that grow up in bilingual households often don't speak right away because their brains are processing. And then when they do speak, they start with both languages coming out at the same time. And but we don't call that a failure, right? Because their brains are just working through all of that information. And so sometimes we set out to do something and we think, well, I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Right. We should do
and
this.
Then you go, no!
Why did I do that?
But then in the end, it ends up working out fine. And Maddie went to school to be an English teacher.
Yeah.
So, again, God also works through some of these situations as we are doing our best to lead our kids, to teach our kids, and to follow Him.
Yeah.
And so when it all gets to be a jumbled mess, He has a way of working things out and just being patient.
Yeah, that's true. Just like we need to be.
Yes.
I have probably 2 examples. One was my third Benjamin. He had really bad trouble reading. Like he just was not getting it. He was very phonetic. So how the way he thought the words should be were not how they were written.
Yeah.
And I think I freaked out too much about that. Like that was one thing that I wish I wouldn't have done because like he was terrible at reading. And then when he turned 8, he read everything.
Yeah.
Like it was instant. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
I mean, we just kept practicing and doing stuff.
That's about Maddie was about 8 when it just clicked for her.
And the only one of my 6 kids that happened to. The other ones were pretty early readers. So I feel like I shouldn't have freaked out as
Yeah.
much. And I try to encourage homeschooler families that I know not to freak out about the stuff when
Right.
they're little. I think when you're homeschooling, you put pressure on yourself.
Yes.
Like if somebody found out he wasn't reading
Well,
when
and
he
when
was
you
6
have
or 7, then
right,
they're
when
gonna
you have
think I'm
two kids
terrible.
that do
Right.
it, they pick it up, and you
Right.
start to think, okay, what am I
Yeah.
doing wrong?
What is
You
wrong
can
with this?
second guess yourself, and
Right.
you wonder, okay, is he gonna be able to? Do I
Yes.
need intervention? You
Right.
start thinking
Do I
about
need
all
to
of
take
these
him
things.
somewhere? I don't know.
Right.
But it was like instant. He read all of a sudden. The second thing, one thing that I regret in homeschooling is I'm really good at math. I'm a science math kind of
Yeah.
person, and I did not like go through all the math with my kids. I feel like as much as I could have. Like I wish I would have been one on one with math
Mhm.
more. I also wish that we would have taught it in co-op, like had a class
Yeah.
for math. That's when they got older. But I mean, the kids did great. They've all graduated from college
Yes.
and everything. But
And you homeschooled all the way.
Yes.
I homeschooled. Maddie went into high school in 9th grade, and Taylor was in 11th grade when they actually went to school.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that was something when we moved to Covington, we felt like we needed to completely integrate into this culture, which Holmes High School, very, inner city
Right.
high school,
Right.
very, very different from homeschooling. But it was something we prayed about, and we felt like the Lord was, sending us there, which was difficult for me. Maddie, I think, was really excited about going to school. She always wanted to go to school. Taylor didn't really care. He liked to get his work done and be done.
Yeah. Okay.
But putting them in school, I really struggled with it because I wanted to homeschool the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes God has other plans.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we have to be.
Or there's other situations.
And there's other situations, yeah. And so we have to be flexible with that. And also, one real benefit that came from that I didn't really consider. Taylor's brilliant. He's such a smart kid. And Maddie is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
But in Taylor's shadow, one thing about only having two kids, being in Taylor's shadow, and again, he was reading like astronaut at 4 years old, and she struggled with reading in the beginning. She compared herself to him. When she got to school, she realized how smart she was.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, that was God's gift to her, showing her that, and again, you shouldn't compare yourself,
Right.
but going to public school and realizing how smart that she was, and going in, they did all these weird tests with her because you're homeschooled.
You got to make sure.
Yes, you're up to the level.
Yeah.
Well, they deemed her not, and so they put her in like a remedial math class and all of these things. And she totally worked out of all of those things. And ended up being valedictorian of her class. In those 4 years, she went from them telling her that she wasn't enough, that she didn't have X, Y, and Z because she homeschooled.
Yeah.
But I think because she homeschooled, she was able to get in there. She had a good basis for learning.
Right.
And I think, I had a very high standard for things, a higher standard than some of her teachers did. So going in there, she worked really hard. And then she ended up earning also the International Baccalaureate diploma, which is an international
really
diploma. She was the only one in her class that year that actually got the diploma. So, she graduated with honors. And I don't know that she would have excelled the way that she did when she got to college, because her mindset was that she wasn't as smart.
Right.
And so, again, I think that
it's a beautiful gift.
Yes, absolutely it is. And it really frustrated me in putting them in school that they were so looked down upon, like they were not going to be able to do this.
Right.
And when Taylor went in as a junior, he wanted to go into the AP chemistry class. And the teacher was like, I'm not sure about this. He had already had chemistry for 2 years because he loved it.
Yeah.
And so he took it his freshman year with another math class. His sophomore year, he took it with another science class.
Uh-huh.
He was taking two at the same time because he loved chemistry. And so he ended up being like her teacher's helper
Oh,
because he was
yeah.
so good at
Yeah.
it. And she just raved and raved about him. So the idea that for me was a struggle.
Right.
You know, I know my kids are smart,
Right.
and even if they're not, the idea that because you homeschool they're less
Right.
than, I don't
Right.
know if that has changed. I mean, my kids have been out of school since 2017, so you know it's been within the last 10 years. But yeah, just I was a little bit offended for them.
Yes.
You know, like, what do you mean my school was not good enough? I had very high standards.
Right. Right.
And I mean, I know that they don't know that.
Right.
But
Yes. There's some homeschoolers that don't do school.
it's true.
I mean, like, that's just the
They're
truth of
unschooled.
it.
Yes.
Right. So I think, they have a little bit of reason that they are skeptical. But
Yes. But
as
I
long as
think
they
the
allow 'em to
majority
show
of
it.
people, when they choose to homeschool,
Right.
they're doing it because either for religious reasons,
Yeah.
or they're doing it because they recognize that they can offer their
Right.
kids a better education,
Right.
because you know your kid
Right.
and you have time
Right.
when you homeschool. And I think now moms, with everything that has happened since COVID and what is going on, number one, just educationally in the public schools, um, I think there's an awful lot of ideology
Yeah.
that is being taught as opposed to reading,
Just
writing,
like
and
the facts.
arithmetic.
Yes.
Right?
Just
Like,
basic education.
right. And indoctrination. There's an agenda that there hasn't been. Like when I was in school, there wasn't any of that.
No.
And even I feel like when my kids went to high school, there was some ideology, but the majority of the teachers really just wanted to teach.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And they had their own
beliefs or thoughts
right,
or values.
which is fine, but it wasn't really being. A couple of the teachers might have been pushing, but for the most part, and my kids had a good enough foundation that I don't think that it permeated too much.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think that with all of the stuff that's happening right now in our world, school is just not quite as safe in general.
Right. World's not.
The world is not. And so for all of those reasons, I would consider it. Now, God may not be leading, and God may not lead everybody to homeschool. But I feel like he's probably leading more to do it than want to do it. It is a sacrifice.
Right. It is. It's a challenge.
It is a challenge. You know what, though? They were the best years of my life.
Yeah.
I loved having my kids at home. I loved, yes, there were days when I thought, man, if I could just go to the store and come, and have like this hour by myself. I obviously you have those kind of days.
Right.
But I feel like I would have done it 1,000 times over.
I would too. I don't have any regrets of homeschooling.
I don't either. And I don't regret, which I feel like if the Lord is leading you to do something and you step out and do it in faith, even if there are things about it that you would change, I don't think that you end up even having the opportunity to regret a situation because you know God led you there.
Right.
And you know that he's going to give you the grace to do it. Even if you feel like you can't. I felt that way. I felt like I'm not qualified for this. Because it's one thing, it's enough to feel like you're responsible for this person. And then when you're responsible for every part of this
You're right.
person,
Everything they're going to learn.
everything they're going to
Except for
learn.
God's really in charge.
He really is.
Yes.
Yes.
But we think we are.
Yes.
We're stewards of the kids and trying to get them where they need to be.
Right. And to teach them, obviously, they need to learn life skills. They need to learn reading, writing, arithmetic. They need history. They need to understand those things. But bigger picture, they also need all of the life skills.
Right. Cooking.
Beyond, yes.
Sewing, laundry.
Budgeting.
Right.
All of the things that...
planning and organization.
Right.
Skills.
And even just like at the very beginning, we talked about just being still.
Right.
Just being quiet and being able to rest.
Right.
Which is a skill.
Still learning.
Yeah. Yes. Is there anything else that we really need to talk about? Anything that you were thinking about that you would like to share? I mean, I could talk for days about homeschooling.
I don't have anything in my mind at this point.
Well, we may end up having to do a follow-up video depending on what kind of feedback we get. If people want more specifics on, how you chose curriculum.
Right.
And did you change
there's
it?
A lot of that.
There's so much.
And I did change.
We did too.
The math didn't work for the boys that had worked for the first two.
Yeah.
So.
And even, I feel like some are really good in grade school, and then you get towards middle school and they're not as strong in certain things that you want your kids to work on. Hey, you're okay. So there is so much.
Yeah.
And again, I loved homeschooling, and I encourage everyone to pray about it and see if God is leading you there, because it's time that you get to spend with your kids that is just rewarding.
Yeah. And you're discipling them.
Yes.
You're just helping them to learn more about God and to walk in sanctification and
in grace and
forgiveness.
Too, right?
So I think it's just you're the chief discipler of your kids, and it gives you opportunity and time to do that well.
Yes. And you learn so many things. So many things that you need to let go of.
Yes.
I've been a perfectionist with my house, and when you've got kids home all day, there's not even time sometimes to reset your house before the train is moving.
Yes. And
so God gives you the grace to grow as the mom that you need to be for all of these little people.
Yeah.
And I think Mishka is telling us
it's a sanctifying thing.
It is for everybody involved.
It is.
Yes. So with that, you are shedding like crazy. With that, I think we're going to wrap up for today. Thank you so much for being here and talking about this. And I do hope that this has been encouraging. I hope that that you will reach out if you need some help, if you need just some ideas. One of the things that we didn't really talk about were ways that we were creative in getting to the end of the school year and some of those kind of things. So maybe we will do a follow-up video just on some specifics. We talked kind of broad brush, but we could probably talk specifics and really give people some ideas. I mean, you did it for how many years?
23.
23. I only did it for 12 years. But, in 12 years, you find a lot of ways to make it to the end of that school year. And then just things to incorporate that make it more fun for them and to keep you from losing your mind. Because sometimes you do feel like even the most wonderful things that God gives us, sometimes we get to the end of our rope with them.
Yes, that's true.
So with that, we're going to wrap up. Thanks again for being with us, and we will see you again soon.